Jayon Rail walked into Sunbridge High like he owned the place. He did not own the place. He had transferred 3 days ago from a school 2 cities away, and he still could not find the second floor bathroom without getting lost. But he walked like that did not matter. Chin up, earphones in, backpack slung over one shoulder, dark hair slightly messy. He looked like someone who had
Uh,
decided a long time ago that he was not going to care what anyone thought, and had been very consistent about it since. Kim Doyen noticed him on the first day. That was not unusual. Everyone noticed Rail on the first day. He was the kind of person the eye just landed on, the way it lands on a sticker on a plain wall. But most people noticed Rail and then moved on, going back to their lunch tables and their friend groups and their comfortable little worlds. Dohyun kept looking, which was a problem because Dohyun was someone who did not usually look twice at anything. He was the class monitor, the guy who always had his notes color coded, the one the teachers trusted to remind everyone about deadlines. He was neat, he was organized. He sat in the third row and liked it there. His whole life was predictable, and he liked that too. Rail was not predictable. On the second day, Rail sat at the wrong lunch table, the one that technically belonged to the seniors who used it every Tuesday, and did not move when they told him to. He just looked up at them, took out one earphone, said, "Oh, is this a reserved table? I don't see a sign," and then put his earphone back in and kept eating. The seniors left. The whole cafeteria stared. Rail ate his rice like nothing happened. Doyun, sitting 2 tables away, realized his spoon had been hovering in the air for a full 10 seconds, and he had not taken a single bite. On the third day, which was today, the problem got worse. It was during the break between second and third period. Do-yoon was at his locker, stacking his books in the precise order he needed them. Science, then math, then literature. When he heard someone humming beside him, he turned. Rail had the locker right next to his. Of course he did. "Hey," Rail said, without looking up. He was pulling out a single notebook and nothing else, which Doyun found deeply illogical for someone who had 3 more classes ahead. "Hey," Doyun said carefully. "You're the class monitor, right?" Rail asked. "Yes, cool." Rail looked at him then, properly, for the first time. He had dark eyes that felt very direct, like they were not wasting time getting to the point. "You ever smile?" Doyun blinked. "What?" "You've had this face on for 3 days." Rail gestured vaguely at Do-hyun's entire expression. "Like you're doing a math problem. Is school that serious to you?" Do-hyun felt something sharp climb up the back of his neck. "I take my responsibility seriously, yes." "Sure," Rail said. He did not sound mocking, which was almost more annoying. He sounded genuinely interested, like he was filing this information away for later use. "I'm Rail." "I know." "I'm Do-yin." "I know." Rail smiled. It was a small smile, one corner only, like a door opening just a crack. "See you around, class monitor." He walked away. Do-yin stood by his locker for a moment longer than he should have, holding his science textbook and not entirely sure what had just happened. The rest of the day passed the way school days usually did. Lectures, notes, the low hum of boredom in the back half of every class. But Doyun noticed, against his will, that Rael paid attention differently from everyone else. He did not take many notes. He just watched the board, or sometimes the teacher's face, with this steady, patient focus, like he was reading something most people could not see. Twice, a teacher called on him, expecting to catch him not paying attention, and twice he answered correctly without even sitting up properly. The third time, the teacher looked almost personally offended. Do-hyun felt something he could not fully name. It was not admiration. It was something closer to curiosity, which was more uncomfortable, because curiosity had no clear endpoint. After the last class, there was a student council notice posted on the board outside the main hall. Do-hyun stopped to read it, a reminder about the upcoming Culture Week committee signups. He was already on the committee. He had been for 2 years. "You going to sign up?" said a voice beside him. Rail again. This time, leaning against the wall next to the notice board, arms crossed, reading the same flyer. "I'm already on the committee," Do-hyun said. "Of course you are." That small smile again. "What about fun? Are you signed up for that too?" Do-hyun turned to look at him. Fun is not a committee. Maybe that's the problem. The hallway was emptying out around them. Most students had gone home or to the canteen. The light through the corridor windows was that late afternoon gold that made everything look softer than it actually was. Doyun noticed, distantly, that Rael was watching him again with those direct eyes, waiting to see what he would say next. You're strange, Doyun told him. Probably, Rael agreed. He pushed off the wall and picked up his bag. But you keep talking to me, so. He left again. Dohyun looked back at the notice board without reading a single word on it. This, he thought, is going to be a problem. He was right. Sunbridge High had a tradition. Every year, during the week before Culture Week, someone in Class 2A started a dare chain. It was stupid. Everyone knew it was stupid. It had been going on for 6 years, and every year the teachers said they would put a stop to it, and every year they somehow did not, because the dares were never actually dangerous, just embarrassing enough to be entertaining. This year, Park Siwon started it. Siwon was the kind of person who was friends with everyone and close to no one, which made him excellent at social games. He had bright energy and a loud laugh, and he sat in the back row next to the window, where he spent most of the day watching the school courtyard and inventing reasons to make other people's afternoons interesting. The dare on the board, written in red marker and taped next to the classroom door, so everyone saw it before they sat down. Someone has to compliment a stranger in the hallway, on the lips. Whoever does it gets Siwon's Friday canteen pass. That's not a compliment, said Lee Junho, who was the most literal person in Class 2A. That's kissing. It's a compliment delivered physically, Siwon said, extremely seriously. This is going to get someone in trouble, said Minji from the second row. It's going to get someone a free lunch, Siwon corrected. Dohyun walked in halfway through this conversation, read the dare on the board, and immediately felt tired. This is a violation of at least 3 school conduct rules, he said. Which is why you, class monitor, are exempt, Siwon said generously. You don't have to do it. Dohyun sat down. No one should do it. I'll do it, said a voice from the back. Everyone turned. Rael, who had somehow slipped in behind Dohyun and taken the empty seat in the second to last row, raised one hand. He looked calm, almost bored. The class immediately erupted. You've been here 4 days, Junho said. 5, Rael corrected. And I want the canteen pass. I forgot my lunch money today. This was, somehow, the most reasonable justification anyone could have offered, and it briefly silenced the room. Who are you going to pick? Minji asked, leaning forward. Rael looked around the class like he was doing a very basic calculation. Then his eyes stopped somewhere. Do-hyun, who had been pointedly looking at his notebook and refusing to participate in this chaos, felt the back of his neck go warm. Not me, he said without looking up. I will physically move away. He's exempt anyway, Siwon said quickly, because he valued his own safety and Do-hyun was still the class monitor. Rael said nothing. He just smiled that small smile and looked back at the board. The dare happened, or tried to happen, at second break. Rael walked up to a boy from Class 2C, named Hansel, who was standing near the water fountain, said something very politely, and Hansel immediately backed away saying, No, absolutely not, you're insane. Rael accepted this gracefully and came back to the hallway, empty-handed and canteen passless. That's failure, Siwon noted helpfully. I was polite about it, Rael said. Polite doesn't count. Then what does? Someone who says yes, Rael considered this. Then he looked down the hallway, which was where Do-hyun happened to be walking, carrying a stack of Culture Week forms to the teacher's office because of course he was. Do-hyun saw the look. He recognized it. His feet moved faster. He did not move fast enough. Rael caught up to him in the side hallway, the narrow one near the old storage room that nobody used. It was not crowded there. It was actually very quiet. Do-hyun. No, said Do-hyun, still walking. I haven't said anything yet. Whatever you were about to say, no. Rael stepped in front of him, and then, because the hallway was narrow, he put one hand on the wall beside Do-hyun's shoulder, not boxing him in, just stopping the forward movement. Do-hyun stopped. He had no real choice. He looked up. Rael was close, closer than people usually stood. If you're gonna kiss a guy, Rael said, very quietly, looking at him with those direct eyes, kiss me instead. The whole hallway went very still. The forms in Do-hyun's arms felt extremely heavy. That, Do-hyun said, after a pause that lasted too long, is not what the dare said. I made it my own. You are the most. Do-hyun stopped himself. took a breath. Get away from my wall. Rael stepped back, hands raised, smiling like he had won something. You said my wall. This is a school hallway. Move. Rael moved. Dohyun walked to the teacher's office, submitted the forms, and stood outside the door for approximately 45 seconds, doing nothing, which he never did. Inside his chest, something small and inconvenient had started to move. He ignored it the way he ignored most inconvenient things. It did not stay ignored. Culture Week committee meant after school meetings. Doyen knew this. He had always known this. For 2 years, he had gone to those meetings, taken notes, organized spreadsheets, and been the person everyone relied on to make sure the booths were properly assigned. And the schedule did not collapse into disaster. What he had not anticipated was that this year, Rail would sign up. He found out on Monday, 3 days after the hallway incident, when he walked into the committee room and saw Rael sitting sideways in a chair near the window, boots on the seat, reading something on his phone. The teacher advisor had not arrived yet. 3 other students were there. Minseo, who handled art, and the Kim twins, Jian and Jino, who somehow always ended up doing everything together. Dohyun stopped in the doorway. You joined the committee, he said. Rael looked up. You said fun is not a committee. I wanted to check if that was true. You joined a committee to prove a point about committees, and also because Siwon owed me a favor and said this was the one committee that had a food budget. Rail looked back at his phone. Both can be true. Do-hyun walked to his usual seat, set down his bag, and opened his notebook. He wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. His handwriting was very neat. He stared at it. Across the room, Rail had gone back to his phone, completely unbothered, as if he had not just inserted himself into the one part of Do-hyun's school life that had been reliably calm for 2 years. The meeting went fine. Rael was, irritatingly, useful. When the discussion about the stage setup stalled because nobody could agree on the layout, Rael pulled out a notebook, just one, always just one, and sketched something in about 40 seconds flat. It was a simple diagram, clean and clear, showing how the stage could be angled so it faced both the courtyard and the main hall entrance at the same time. Everyone immediately said yes to it. Do-hyun wrote it into the official notes and did not say anything. But after the meeting, when the others had left and Do-hyun was staying to organize the printed schedules into folders, Rael did not leave. He sat on the windowsill, actually on it, feet hanging outside, which was technically against school rules because the window was on the second floor, and watched the sky go orange. You should sit normally, Do-hyun said without looking up. I like it here. You'll fall. I won't. Do-hyun stapled a set of papers together. Then, after a moment, that stage layout was good. Silence. Then, lightly, was that a compliment? Class monitor?
It was an observation.
Right, but when Do-hyun glanced over, Rael was looking at the sky again, and there was something different in his face. Not the small smile. Something quieter. Something that looked, for just a second, a little bit like he had needed to hear that. It disappeared fast. Why did you transfer? Do-hyun asked. Rael's feet stilled. Felt like it. That's not a real answer. No. Rael looked down at the courtyard below. The golden light caught the side of his face. My parents moved. My dad got relocated. It wasn't my choice. Do-hyun stopped with a stapler. I'm sorry. Don't be. Old school wasn't that great either. A pause. It's weird, starting over. You have all these habits and you walk into a new place and none of your habits fit yet. Everything's slightly off, like wearing someone else's shoes. Do-hyun thought about that. Does it get better? Probably. Rail looked over at him. You've lived here a long time? Since I was 7. Same school district since primary. And you like it? Being that settled? Do-hyun considered the question honestly. I like knowing what to expect. Yeah, Rail said it softly, like he understood exactly what that felt like, and also like it was something he had never had. I used to be like that. The room was quiet. Outside, the sky had gone from orange to a deep, heavy pink. Someone in the courtyard below was kicking a can across the pavement. The sound echoed up clearly. You don't have to perform not caring, Do-hyun said. It came out before he decided to say it. Rail looked at him sharply. The not caring thing, Do-hyun clarified carefully. You do it very well, but you don't have to. A long pause. Then Rail smiled. This time it was not the small one-corner smile. It was fuller, and it looked surprised, like he had not expected to be seen and was not entirely sure how to feel about it. You're strange, he said. You said that first about me, Dohyun pointed out. Yeah. Rail jumped down from the windowsill, picked up his notebook, and slung his bag over his shoulder. Maybe that's why it keeps working. He left. Dohyun closed his folder of schedules and sat still for a moment. The something in his chest from the hallway had gotten slightly larger. He closed his notebook, stacked it precisely, and told himself it was nothing. It was very much something. It was a Thursday, and everything was running late. The Culture Week kickoff was in 4 days. The committee had a standing agreement that the week before the event, they would meet in the evening if necessary, which the teacher advisor had approved with the understanding that everyone left by 8 and signed out with the guard. The school was not empty in the evenings. There were club practices. The library was open until 7:30, and the janitor, Mr. Go, was always somewhere on the premises, moving very slowly and listening to old songs on a small radio. Do-hyun and Rael ended up being the last two people in the committee room at 7:15. This was not planned. The others had finished their parts earlier. Minseo had a prior commitment. The Kim twins had left together at 6, waving over their shoulders. The teacher advisor had said, Do-hyun, you've got the key, lock up when you're done, and trusted him absolutely the way teachers always trusted. Rael was supposed to have left too, but his section of the prop list had a mistake. 3 booth items double counted, which would mess up the budget, and Doyen had caught it and mentioned it, which meant Rael had stayed to fix it, which he was doing now at the table across from Dohyun, going through the list with a pencil, erasing and rewriting numbers. The room was quiet. The overhead light was a little yellow and a little warm. Outside, the school grounds were mostly dark, except for the glow from the gym, where the basketball club was still running drills. It was, unexpectedly, nice. Do-hyun was working on the stage schedule. He was a fast worker, but a thorough one. He went over things twice, which meant he was always the last to finish, and never made mistakes. Rael worked differently. He would stop and stare at the ceiling for 30 seconds, and then write down 3 things very fast. It should not have been efficient. It somehow was. At some point, they stopped working in parallel and started working together. Rael reading numbers out loud and Do-hyun checking them against the master sheet, calling out corrections. It fell into a rhythm easily, quicker than it had any right to. 30 paper lanterns, Rael read. Correct, already listed. 20 meters of string lights, warm white. Correct. 1 fog machine, borrowed from the drama club. That one is wrong. It should say rented, not borrowed. There is the deposit. Rail crossed something out. Okay. 1 fog machine rented. A pause. Is the deposit in the budget? I put a buffer in. It's covered. Of course you did. He said it the way he usually said things about Do-hyun being organized. Not mocking, but warm, almost fond. Do-hyun did not react. He made a small note on his own sheet. They finished the list at 10 past 7. Rail leaned back in his chair and stretched his arms above his head, making a small sound of relief. His shirt came untucked slightly. He did not notice or did not care. Do-hyun gathered the finished sheets and tapped them against the desk to align them. You're very good at this, Rail said. He was looking at the ceiling. At organizing? At knowing what everyone needs before they ask. You had a note in the budget for the fog machine deposit before anyone mentioned it was rented. He tilted his head and looked at Do-hyun sideways. Do you do that with people too? Think ahead about what they need? Do-hyun considered the question. I try to. And right now? Right now, what? Rail sat forward. His elbows went on the table. He was closer now, the way he had a habit of getting. Not aggressively, just gradually, like water moving toward a drain. What do you think I need right now? It was a direct question. Rael's eyes were steady and serious, not teasing. Do-hyun looked at him carefully, probably to stop asking questions that don't have simple answers at 7 in the evening. Rael laughed. It was a real one. Not the quiet smile, but actual laughter, sudden and short, surprised out of him. He pressed his hand over his mouth a second too late. You're funny, he said. You know that? You're actually funny. I know, Do-hyun said. He picked up his pen. He was fighting something in his face, not entirely successfully. You almost smiled, Rael said, pointing. I did not. You almost did. It was right there. He gestured at the corner of Do Hyun's mouth. Finish your notes. I'm done. Then start packing up. Rael did not start packing up. He stayed with his elbows on the table and watched Do Hyun file the papers. I think, he said, more slowly, that I'm going to do something right now, and I want to tell you first, so you're not surprised. Do-hyun looked up. Rael stood. He walked around to Do-yoon's side of the table, stopped in front of his chair, and held out his hand. Do-yoon looked at it. Walk home with me, Rael said. Not because of a dare. Not because of committee. Just because it's dark, and my apartment is 3 streets from yours, and I looked it up. You looked up my address? It's on the committee roster. It's public. Do-yoon stared at the hand for a moment. Then he put his pen down, stood up, and picked up his bag. He did not take the hand, but he walked toward the door. Fine, he said, but I'm locking the room first. Obviously, Rail said, and he was smiling, and it was the wide one. They walked home. Nothing dramatic happened. They talked about small things, the fog machine, the color of string lights, whether warm white or cool white was better. At the corner where their paths split, Rail lifted one hand, said, See you tomorrow, and turned. Do-hyun walked the last 3 streets alone. But something had changed. He could feel it clear as weather, the way you can feel rain coming before a single drop falls. It was Siwon who caused the damage, not on purpose. Siwon rarely did anything on purpose that caused damage. He was one of those people whose chaos came from genuine innocence rather than intent, which somehow made it worse, because there was nobody to be properly angry at. What happened was this. Siwon was telling someone about the dare, specifically about what Rail had said in the side hallway. The, if you're going to kiss a guy, kiss me instead moment. And he was telling it as a funny story, the way Siwon told everything, with enthusiastic hand gestures and minor exaggerations. He was telling it to Lee Junho. Lee Junho was telling it to someone else by lunchtime. By the end of the day, the story had traveled and mutated the way all school stories did. By the time it reached the second year seniors hallway, the version going around was that Rail had made a bet, not a dare. A bet that he could make the class monitor fall for him before Culture Week. That the whole thing was a game. That the committee sign up, the late evenings, the walking home, all of it was part of the bet. Do-hyun heard it from Minji. She had come to find him specifically because she was not a cruel person and she thought he should know. She told him in the library in a low voice, with her hands folded on the table and a genuinely sorry expression. I don't think it's true, she said. I really don't. But people are talking and I thought you should hear it from me first. Do-hyun listened. He kept his face completely still. Then he said, Thank you, and went back to his book. He did not read a single word on the page. That afternoon, he went to the committee room for the scheduled meeting, and he was early, which he always was. When Rael arrived, Do-hyun did not look up from his notebook. He did not greet him. He organized the papers in front of him with extra focus, as if the alignment of pages was the most important thing in the world. Rael noticed immediately. Of course he did. Hey, Rael said, dropping into his usual chair. You okay? Fine, Do-hyun said. Short, flat, the kind of fine that is the loudest possible word. Rael looked at him for a moment, then at the room, then back. Did something happen? Meeting starts in 2 minutes. The other members filed in. The meeting ran its course. Do-hyun was efficient and precise and spoke exactly when he needed to and not one word more. Rael kept glancing at him from across the table. Do-hyun did not glance back. When the meeting ended, Do-hyun was the first to start packing. He was almost at the door when Rael said quietly but clearly, Do-hyun, I have things to do, Do-hyun said. 2 minutes. I'm busy. What did I do? The rest of the committee had gone. It was just the two of them in the doorway, and Do-hyun turned around because he could hear something in Rael's voice. Not the casual lightness he usually had, but something tighter, something that was actually asking, Is it true? Do-hyun said. His voice was level. The bet. Rael went very still. The story going around, Do-hyun continued, because saying it clearly was better than leaving it vague. That you made a bet, that you were trying to make me fall for you as a game before Culture Week. Rael's jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on Do-hyun. No, he said. That is not true. The dare was a dare, for a canteen pass, nothing more. His voice was low and careful. I didn't make a bet. I don't know where that came from. Doyen looked at him. He was good at reading people. He had always been. But Rael was harder than most. He had too many layers. His face right now showed something Doyen had not seen there before, something that looked genuinely hurt. Okay, Doyun said. Okay, Rael stared. That's it? I said okay, I believe you. You? Rael stopped, something in his face shifted. You were going to walk out. I said I believe you. A long pause. Outside the window, the late sky was bruised and cloudy, no sunset tonight, just gray settling into gray. I need you to know, Rael said, and his voice had gone low and very honest, like he was pulling the words from somewhere careful, that nothing I have done with you has been a game. Doyen was very still. Not the walking home, not the committee, not the hallway. Rail held his gaze, none of it. Doyen looked down at the folder in his hands, up again. Then what is it? He asked. Rail was quiet for a beat. Then I don't know yet, but it's real. Do-hyun walked out of the room, not angrily, just carefully, like a person who needed a moment of space before they responded to something that had reached them more than expected. He did not tell Rael it had reached him, but he also did not go home the fast way. He walked the long route, past the 3 streets that were near Rael's building, and he thought about the word real and how it sounded in Rael's voice, and what it meant that he was still hearing it clearly, even after the school was a full kilometer behind him. Culture Week arrived. It was exactly as chaotic as every year. Booths and banners, the smells of food from the canteen's special menu, music from someone's speaker that did not match the school's official playlist, but nobody stopped. Students who had not spoken all year suddenly became urgent allies over booth setups. Teachers who were usually strict about uniform policy somehow looked the other direction at the flower crowns and painted faces. Doyun ran it. Not officially, there was a committee chair, a senior named Park Yuna, who had the title. But in practice, Do-hyun was the one with the master schedule, the one people came to when something went wrong, the one who had the radio to Mr. Go because the janitor was the only person who could unlock the back storage room on short notice. It was exactly where he was supposed to be. Rail was at the stage. His diagram, the one he had sketched in 40 seconds at that first meeting, had become the actual blueprint for the stage setup. He was there in the morning when the pieces were being assembled, pointing things out calmly, not directing loudly, but in that way he had where people just listened to him. By noon, the stage was up, and it looked exactly right, angled perfectly so it caught the audience from both sides. Do-hyun passed it at 10 minutes past 12 and stopped. The stage crew was on a break. Rail was there alone, checking the mic stand with careful hands, tilting it slightly, checking again. He had a smudge of dust on his jaw and his sleeves rolled to the elbows. The afternoon sun fell on him at an angle that was deeply unfair. He looked up and saw Doyen. Everything okay with the schedule? He asked. Booth 7 needs 30 minutes, moved up, but the rest is running. Good. Rail straightened and looked at the stage. What do you think? It's good, Doyen said. The angle is exactly right. I checked this morning. I meant, Rail glanced at him briefly. Never mind. What? I meant, what do you think? Not the logistics. Dohyun looked at the stage properly. The light fell warm on the wood. The strings of lights were not on yet. They would come on in the evening. But the frame was up, and it looked like something alive and waiting. He thought about Rail sketching it in 40 seconds, and all the evenings in the committee room and the walk home in the dark. I think, he said carefully, it looks like you. Rail turned to look at him. Simple. And it works better than anything more complicated would. Rail looked at the stage, then at Dohyun. Something in his face was very quiet. Are you complimenting me or the stage? Both, Dohyun said, and walked away before he could see Rail's reaction. But that evening, 20 minutes before the stage program started, something went wrong. Not with the stage, with Siwon, who had, in the spirit of Culture Week and what he described as romantic atmosphere, decided to announce publicly, over the event microphone, while the whole school was gathered in the courtyard, that Rail should be given the Culture Week confession booth slot because, and Siwon said this word for word, he's been confessing to the same person the whole month, and it's time to finish the story. The crowd reacted the way crowds always did to that kind of announcement, with noise and attention and zero mercy. Do-hyun was standing near the Booth 7 sign when the mic announcement hit. He heard his own name. Siwon was not subtle, and he felt every single person in the area look at him. He did not run. He was not going to run at his own culture week. He straightened his clipboard and walked, with full composure, to the equipment shed on the side of the courtyard, which was the closest structure with a door. He had been in there for approximately 90 seconds when the door opened. Rail stepped in. He closed the door behind him. The shed was small. Lawn tools, folded chairs, some rope. It smelled like soil and rust. The noise of the event outside was muffled but present, a low celebration beyond the thin walls. They looked at each other. I'm going to kill Swan, Rail said. Get in line, said Do-yoon. Rail pushed a hand through his hair. He looked more uncomfortable than Do-yoon had ever seen him. Genuinely, rawly uncomfortable. Not performing anything. I did not plan that. I know. I don't want it to happen like that. In front of everyone. He stopped. That's not how I'd want to do it. Do-hyun looked at him directly. How would you want to do it? Silence. Outside, the stage program had started. They could hear music, faint and warm. Rail looked at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, so you can hear it properly. Do-hyun's hands tightened around the clipboard. Rail, he said. His voice was calm, but there was something working underneath it. Are you going to say something, or keep almost saying it? Rail stepped forward. Do-hyun stood his ground. I like you, Rail said. Flat out, no build-up. The way he answered teachers who tried to catch him off guard, simple and direct and completely sure. I've liked you since you called me strange on the third day and meant it like an observation. I like how you think ahead. I like that you noticed I was performing. I like that you walked the long way home. Do-hyun's breath went quiet. You checked? He said. I checked. The music outside drifted through the walls. Do-hyun looked at Rail and thought about the word real and how long he had been carrying it and about all the times he had told himself it was an inconvenience. You're still strange, Do-hyun said. I know. Okay. Okay meaning I heard you. A pause. Long, and then quietly. And I've been walking the long way since the second week. Rail went very still, and then he smiled, the wide one, the real one. Outside, Culture Week was happening. Inside the shed, with the smell of soil and rust and faint music coming through the walls, two people stood in the warm quiet of something finally, carefully said. The next day was a Saturday. School was not in session. Culture Week had an optional cleanup day, which meant only the committee was expected in, and only for a couple of hours in the morning. Do-hyun arrived at 8:30 because he always arrived early. He spent 40 minutes folding cloth banners and sorting booth frames into the storage cart, and he was precise and efficient and organized about it, and nobody would have looked at him and seen anything different. Inside, everything was different. Brell showed up at 9:15 with 2 cups of convenience store coffee. One black, one with oat milk because he had, without asking, remembered that Do-hyun took oat milk, which Do-hyun had mentioned exactly once, 2 weeks ago, in passing, when they were arguing about the canteen's drink selection. He held out the oat milk cup. Do-hyun took it. You remembered, Do-hyun said. I pay attention, Rail said simply, like it was nothing, like it was just a fact about himself. They worked through the cleanup in a comfortable quiet, the kind that had not existed between them in the early days, that had been a charged quiet, full of unsaid things. This was different. It was still full, but in a different way, like the room after rain. At 10 o'clock, Siwan arrived, took one look at the two of them standing near the banner cart, and said, Oh, good. So it worked out then. I'm still angry at you, Do-hyun said. But it worked out, Siwan said, very carefully. Leave, said Rael. Siwan left immediately. Min Seo came by later, and the Kim twins, and people moved in and out of the space all morning. Nothing dramatic happened. It was just cleanup, cloth and wire, and folded chairs. The slow unting of something that had been lively the night before. There was something comfortable in that kind of morning, something that felt like the real version of things after the performance was done. At noon, when most people had gone, Do-hyun and Rael were the last ones again. It seemed to be their pattern. They sat on the steps outside the main hall, with the remaining coffees gone cold beside them, and the empty courtyard ahead, and the banners half down from the walls. Can I ask you something? Rael said. Probably. When did you? He paused. chose the words carefully. When did it start? For you. Do-hyun thought about it honestly. Third day. When you told me I looked like I was doing a math problem. Rail looked at him. That was me being annoying. I know. But you were the first person in 4 years who said something like that to me that wasn't criticism. A pause. Most people just say, Do-hyun is reliable or Do-hyun is organized. You looked at my face and said, is school that serious to you? Like the question was, like the question was about you, not your grades. Yes. Rail was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that. Now you do. They sat in the emptying courtyard, and the noon sun was sharp and warm. And somewhere across the school, Mr. Go's radio was playing one of those slow old songs. I want to be honest about something, Rail said. He was looking ahead, not at Do-hyun. I'm not good at staying. Do-hyun looked at him. I've moved 4 times. Every time I start to settle, something moves again. I don't know how long I'll be here. My dad's contract is 2 years, and after that, he stopped. I don't want to promise things I can't keep. Do-hyun was quiet. I'm not asking for a promise, Do-hyun said finally. I'm just here, right now. And so are you, Rail turned to look at him. Something in his eyes had gone soft. That's very mature of you, he said. I'm the class monitor. I'm always mature. A short laugh. And then, carefully, Rail reached over and touched the back of Do-hyun's hand, not grabbing. Just resting there, a question more than a statement. Do-hyun turned his hand over. They sat like that in the empty courtyard, in the noon light, with Mr. Go's old music drifting over, and it was small and quiet and exactly enough. 3 weeks after Culture Week, Doyun's mother found a transfer notice on the kitchen table. It was addressed to his school. It was for Rael, not yet approved. It was a pre-notice, the kind that gets sent home before a decision is made official, asking families to confirm the timeline. But the date on the form was real. End of second semester, the same date as the school year boundary. Doyun's mother had brought it in because it had been slid under the wrong door by the mail carrier. Their apartment was 14B. Rael's family was in 14C, and she had not thought anything of it because she did not know who Rael was. Dohyun sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in his hands for a long time. He did not open it. It was not his to open. He left it in front of 14C's door that evening. The next day at school, Rael did not say anything. Dohyun did not say anything. They walked between classes, sat in their usual positions in the committee room for the final post-event review, and everything was normal on the surface. But at the end of the day, Rael was waiting outside the school gate. Not in his usual casual way. He was standing still, hands in his pockets. He looked at Do-yoon when he came through the gate, and his face had that rare quality it sometimes got. No performance, no light deflection, just what was actually there. You saw it, Rael said. It was delivered to my door. I didn't read it. But you saw the school crest. A pause. Yes. They started walking. The same direction they always walked. Past the convenience store, down the residential lane with the overgrown wall that someone had planted jasmine on years ago. The late afternoon was cooler now. The season had shifted while they were not looking, and there was a bite in the air that had not been there during Culture Week. I was going to tell you, Rael said. I was waiting to see if it got confirmed. Is it confirmed? Not yet, but probably. He looked at the pavement. My dad's company is reassigning him again. Different city. I don't know when exactly. Do-hyun walked. He counted his steps for a moment, an old habit for when he needed something to hold on to. Okay, he said. Rael looked at him. You keep saying okay when I expect you to say something else. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something real. Do-hyun stopped walking. Rael stopped too. They were in front of the jasmine wall, the one that smelled sharp and sweet even this late in the season. The street was quiet. A distant bike bell rang somewhere 2 blocks away. Here is something real, Do-hyun said. He looked at Rael directly, the way Rael had taught him. Not the face he wore for school, not the class monitor face, just his own. I spent 17 years making sure everything was predictable. Same school, same routes, same seats, and then you sat in the locker next to mine and asked me if school was that serious, and everything after that has been not predictable. Rael was very still. I don't know what happens at the end of second semester, Do-hyun continued. Neither do you. But I know that right now, this is real. And I have learned, from a person who is sometimes extremely annoying that right now is allowed to count. A long moment. Then Rael stepped forward, and this time it was not a hand on a wall, not a question, not almost. He put his hand against Doyun's jaw carefully, like holding something that mattered, and Doyun did not move away. You are, Rael said softly, the most honest person I have ever met. You should meet more honest people. I don't want to. I want this one. And then, quietly, in the street, with the jasmine wall and the distant bike bells and the cool end of season air, Dohyun leaned forward the last small distance. It was gentle, brief, the kind of first thing that does not rush. When they pulled back, Rail's hand was still on his jaw, and his eyes were open, and he looked. For the first time since the day he walked into Sunbridge High with his earphones in, like someone who was exactly where he wanted to be. Still think I'm strange? Rail asked. Constantly, said Dohyun, and? Dohyun looked at him, and then finally, properly, the smile that Rael had been trying to find for 2 months appeared, full and real, like something that had been waiting a very long time for the right moment. And I think that might be my favorite thing about you. They stood there in the Jasmine Street as the sky went from gold to blue. A lot was still unknown. The transfer form, the end of semester, the shape of the months ahead. None of it was certain, and none of it had neat answers. And Dohyun, who had always loved neat answers, found that, for once, he was not afraid of that. Because some things you do not plan for. Some things simply arrive, like a new kid with a loud walk and one notebook, and they sit in the locker next to yours, and they ask the right question at the right moment, and then everything after that is different. Not predictable. Better.